If you are preparing for interviews, especially for SQL based profiles, whether it is for a data analyst or a data scientist, you should be expecting questions on primary key and foreign key. These two are one of the most common and frequently asked topics in any SQL based interviews. By the end of this lecture, you will have a complete understanding on both of these topics, and you will feel confident enough to come up with simple explanation in any given interview. So without any further delay, let's try to understand them one by one. Let's say you have this table A, and within this table you have 5 different columns: C1, C2, C3, C4 and C5. And let's say that C1 is a primary key, C2 and C3 are foreign keys. Let's talk about a primary key first. C1 being a primary key, it will not contain any null value. Additionally, all the values will be unique, so you would not find any duplicate values over here. Since this column has all the unique values and there are no null values, this column will identify uniquely each and every row within this given table. Now we have some idea on what a primary key is. Now let's consider that C2 and C3 are foreign keys within this table A. Since these two are foreign keys, it may contain duplicate values. It is absolutely normal to have that. However, each column will give reference to a different table like this. And the table where each of the foreign key is referencing to will be called as a child table, like this table B and table C are child tables for table A. And over here table A will be called as a parent table. Now to each child table, the foreign key like C2 will become a primary key, and C3 to this corresponding table will become a primary key over here, which means a foreign key is a column or a group of column that gives reference to a different table which is called a child table, and to that table it becomes a primary key. Also, within this table, now C2 will not contain any duplicate value and all the values will be absolutely unique without having any null value, and same goes for C3 as well. So we have some idea on primary key and foreign key. Now let's go ahead and see some example on the table from our DVD rental database. Okay, so within this example, I am using this payment table which is coming from the DVD rental database that we are using within this SQL tutorial. So in case you are not watching this playlist from start, I highly suggest to watch all the videos in a sequence to avoid any misunderstanding or confusion. The link for the playlist will be given below in the description box. So as I said, within this payment table, we have some columns like payment ID, customer ID, staff ID, rental ID, amount and payment date. Over here, this payment ID column is a primary key, which if you pay attention, it is denoted by this PK given in a bracket. Also, these 3 columns, customer ID, staff ID and rental ID, are actually foreign keys. Let's start first by this customer ID column. If you see, this column contains a lot of duplicate values, which is absolutely normal for a foreign key. But as any foreign key, this customer ID column is also referencing to a different table where it will work as a primary key. So let's go ahead and see that child table. So as you can see, within this customer table, customer ID column is working as a primary key. However, if you remember, within the payment table, the customer ID was working as a foreign key. Similarly, let's check out the same thing for the other 2 foreign keys, which is staff ID and rental ID. Let's go ahead and see the child table for both of these foreign keys where they are referencing to. So if you can see, I'm using this staff table and rental table from our DVD rental database, and both these table has staff ID and rental ID respectively as their primary key, which is again mentioned with this PK within a given bracket. So we have understood how within a given table we can identify a primary key and foreign keys. Although it is very clear for a primary key to identify it with this given PK naming convention within a bracket, however, it is still a challenge for us to identify the foreign keys. So I will show you a trick that how can you identify foreign keys as well very simply in a given table in PostgreSQL. Okay, so I have opened the pgadmin that is connecting to the PostgreSQL where we have configured the DVD rental database. If you can see, again I am using this payment table over here and I am fetching all the records from this table that we can see over here. This payment ID, which is a primary key within this given table, will not contain any duplicate value or any null value. But let's go ahead and see how do we identify the foreign keys within any given table. On this top left corner, if you will expand the database that you are using, you will get to see this schemas option. I'll expand that as well and I'll look for the table section. Let's go ahead and expand the table section and we will look for the table for which we are trying to identify the foreign keys and primary key. Since we are using the payment table over here, I'm gonna go and select this payment table and then expand. And then we need to look for constraints. I just need to drag this query tool to the right side and then I will expand this constraints section. I'll try to zoom into the screen so that you can see the primary key, which is payment ID over here, is marked as a golden key, which is a single key, not a double key. On the other hand, the other three foreign keys, which is customer ID, rental ID and staff ID, are marked as pair of keys. And this is a simple way of identifying primary key and foreign key within a given table on PostgreSQL. So within this lecture, we have covered what is a primary key and what is a foreign key in a given table and also how to identify them on PostgreSQL. I hope you found this lecture useful. If yes, then please consider dropping a like and subscribe to the channel to support our work. Also, if you have any feedback for me regarding my way of teaching, then feel absolutely free to drop your suggestions below in the comment section. I'll honestly go through each and every comment and take your valuable suggestion into consideration so that I can also modify my way of teaching on this channel to provide you more quality tutorials. That's all for this lecture. Thank you very much for your time. I'll see you in the next topic.